Good evening, everyone. My name is Ty, and I work in the web store here at the Tattered Cover. I would like to thank you all for joining us this evening and supporting local bookstores. 2021 is Tattered Cover's 50th anniversary, and in this year alone, we've continued to add to our list of new ventures and milestones in the book world. Because of you all in our community, we're able to host amazing authors and events like the one we have tonight. I want to inform you all that closed captioning is available on this video for those who might want it or need it. There's a black bar at the bottom of the screen with a button labeled CC on it. Click that button and closed captioning will become available. Tonight, I'm excited to welcome our guest author, Cai Emmons, and MC, Miriam Gershow. Cai Emmons is the author of 5 books of fiction, the novels His Mother's Son, The Stylist, Weather Woman, Sinking Islands, as well as Vanishing, a collection of short stories which won the Leapfrog Press Fiction Contest. Sinking Islands, which debuted today, is the sequel to her acclaimed novel, Weather Woman. Our MC, Miriam Gershow, is the author of The Local News. Her stories have appeared in the Georgia Review, Quarterly West, and Black Warrior Review, among others. I will now turn over our virtual stage to Cai and her guests. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat section. Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you, Cai, for inviting all of us to read on your behalf. I am Miriam Gershow, and I am going to introduce all of us here. Then we are going to hear from Cai. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about Sinking Islands, this beautiful book whose birth into the world is today. And then each of the 6 of us are going to read brief snippets from the book and talk about why we chose the passage that we chose. Like Ty said, please give us your questions. Cai is excited to answer them after the 6 of us read. And the 6 of us. Amy Liu is the author of 4 novels, Glorious Boy, Flash House, Cloud Mountain, and Face. Her nonfiction includes Gaining, the Truth About Life After Eating Disorders, and a memoir, Solitaire. Deborah Gwartney is the author of 2 memoirs, Live Through This and I Am a Stranger Here Myself, and many essays, including the 2020 Pushcart Prize-winning Suffer Me to Pass. Sands Hall is the author of the memoir Reclaiming My Decade Lost in Scientology from Counterpoint, the novel Catching Heaven from Ballantine, and a book of essays and exercises, Tools of the Writer's Craft. Ellen Meeropol is the author of the novels Her Sister's Tattoo, Kinship of Clover, On Hurricane Island, House Arrest, and The Lost Women of Azalea Court, forthcoming in 2022, and recent essays in Ms. Magazine and LitHub, among others. Elizabeth Logan Harris has published short fiction and nonfiction in Colorado Review, Conjunctions, Glimmer Train, Guernica, Long Reads, New England Review, The Rupture, Sequestrum, among others. So today we're not here as ourselves. We are operating as Cai stand-ins, as writers who know and love Cai. Cai comes by her writing of superwomen who existed in Weather Woman and now in Sinking Islands. She comes by it honestly. Anyone who knows Cai is awed by her. She is nimble, generous, unafraid, and irreverent, and kind in a profession and a larger culture that doesn't always understand that kindness and strength can go together. But as we can all attest, Cai has always been and is strong as hell. And we are really excited to be here as Cai stand-ins, but it's kind of impossible to stand in for Cai. So we are using all the help we can get, including a little bit of sartorial help. Let's see. Okay, good. Okay, I can feel myself channeling Cai. And now we are going to hear from her directly.
First, I want to thank the Tattered Cover, one of the country's finest bookstores. I've been lucky to have readings at the Tattered Cover for all my previous books, and I am delighted that they're hosting us today. Thank you so much. Next, enormous thanks to the 6 of you wonderful women writer friends who are helping me out today. As many of you know, I have ALS and cannot speak and would not be able to do this without you, and I hope I can find some similar way to help you out in the future. And finally, thanks to all of you in attendance, especially at this advanced stage of the pandemic when most of us are zoomed out. We writers would be nowhere without readers. If you like what you hear today, I hope you'll spread the news about this book.
Thank you, Cai. And speaking of this book, the great thing about an event like this is that the 6 of us got together to rehearse, to talk about what we chose in the book and why we chose it. And each of us gave our reasons, and then one after another, we said, oh, and the gorgeous prose. So much so that I felt this pressure to come up with something different than, oh, and the gorgeous prose, but it is unavoidable. And I was thinking, the thing about Cai's beautiful prose is that it is beautiful in service of human and humane stories. And there is no more human and humane story than what we have in front of us in Sinking Islands, which is literally about a group of people from across the globe trying to save humanity from itself and trying to save us from climate change. Sinking Islands continues the story of Weather Woman, though it is definitely readable as a standalone. I mean, you should buy both books, but if you want to start with Sinking Islands, you can, and you will be satisfied. We continue the story of Bronwyn Arter, a scientist who in Weather Woman discovers she is in possession of a power to change the weather. So Weather Woman served essentially as her origin story. By the time we get to Sinking Island, Cai has expanded the lens significantly. Now the story is about a group of people from across the globe who Bronwyn is bringing together in order to train them on also harnessing this same power. It's a book that moves from the idea of individual responsibility to collective responsibility, which I think in so many ways is exactly where we are, not just about climate change, but about public health, about racial justice, around police brutality. Cai is writing about these things in a way that is both prescient and urgent and hopeful at a time when it often seems that hope is hardest to come by. So I'm going to read my snippet first, and then we are going to go through the group of readers and we're each going to read our snippet. I chose the very opening of the book. This is the first thing I heard years ago when Cai had what is an audacious idea in literary fiction, which is to write a sequel. And I thought, that's kind of weird. But after she read this page and a half, I was sold. It is not only clear how much her scope is expanded in giving us this glimpse of the titular Sinking Islands, but the prose here somehow is infused with both beauty and dread. So I'm going to read just the first 2 paragraphs of that first page and a half. Before they left the island, it was Analu's habit to canoe along the shore at sunset. The sea was unusually calm then, a quiet mutter beneath the keel. Skipjacks and big eyes swarmed the water's surface, sensing Analu's proximity, puckering their lips for insects and to kiss the fading day. The sun would plummet suddenly, becoming dense and heavy, losing the will to hold itself up. As dusk deepened, the island's lights poked the dark, but eventually the stars tossed across the sky like rice, won out in brilliance, and he felt lifted, a tiny, insignificant thing, invisible as salt in the sea. It comforted him to feel such loneliness. It was that very loneliness that linked him to everything: the departed sun, the stars, the moon, his dead children. But on the last evening before their departure, he and Nalani sat on the beach together, legs pressed into the cool sand, thinking the same thoughts and different ones, wondering how it would be. They had no way of knowing, not really. There were the occasional bulletins from people who had gone before them, one family to Indonesia, one to New Zealand. It wasn't as they expected, they said, but how it was, they couldn't quite say, which left Analu wondering if he and Nalani were making a big mistake. Next, Amy will read.
Thank you so much, Miriam. I am so honored and delighted to be here for you, Kai. And I just adore this book. There's so many things about it that it's really hard to choose what we love the most. But I think one of the things that stands out to me that just awes me is the ambitious scope in terms of geography that this book takes us to: the South Pacific, Brazil, Kansas, Greenland, New Hampshire, Australia, Venice, California, and that's not all. I don't know how you did it. And what struck me was that even though I hadn't been to all of these places, every place that I had been, you just nailed so perfectly the sense of the actual locations, the relevance of those locations to climate change, how climate is different and threatening or threatened in each one of these areas. And you took us to these places while subtly tying together all of these threads of plot and the characters' sense of, you know, connection to their homeland and wonder at the places where they were traveling. It's such an extraordinary tour de force that I loved it. So for armchair travelers, apart from the climate change, this is just a wonderful, wonderful experience and adventure. And one of the tricks that makes it come so alive, I think, is that most, if not all, of the characters, they start in their home place, but then they move to other locations as they travel to come together toward the end of the book. And so they are newcomers or migrants moving from climate zone to climate zone. And we get to travel with them because we are vicariously traveling. So we don't drop into the heads of people who are long-term veterans and natives of these places. We are traveling with people who come to these places with fresh eyes and discover the wonder of a new experience, and sometimes the scary aspects of coming to a new place. And one of my favorite characters who does this is Patty. She's a Kansas native who was in Weather Woman as well. And she moves to California after her husband and her best friend die. And her world opens up at Venice Beach. And I picked this section because I live in Venice Beach. And so I started to think Kai must have lived there because she got so many of the quirky little details, the walk streets and the bungalows and the boardwalk and the interactions between different people from all over the world that happens at Venice. And I just think it's such an incredible accomplishment to be able to do this. So I picked just a couple of paragraphs to read that are among my favorite from this section in Venice. And Patty has come to the beach. The one thing that frightens her just a tad is the vast Pacific. As you can imagine, coming from Kansas, she's never seen the ocean before. So the Pacific is a pretty big deal. On certain days, its waves coalesce into walls that advance with the speed of oncoming trains, reminding her of the volume in all that water out there, of its power and of the possibility of tsunamis. It would be lovely to learn to swim, she thinks, if she weren't so afraid of the water. And now, after seeing what happened to that poor man stung by the jellyfish, well, she doesn't dare. Would you swim here? She asks Earl, her departed best friend, and he just laughs. She sees that poor swimmer with the foreign accent out walking on the boardwalk now and again, sometimes coming down to the water's edge to check for jellyfish. The scar on his arm is still there, not ugly, but certainly prominent, circling his arm, marking him as having endured something like modern stigmata. Poor fellow. And yet he is not, she sees, a person to feel sorry for. He strolls around in his beautiful body with an expression of curiosity and engagement, as if he is one notch away from irrepressible laughter. He is on the beach often enough that she guesses he lives nearby. And what will develop from that encounter between Patty and this foreigner is one of the most extraordinary relationships, heartwarming, unusual relationships I've ever read in literature. So I love that part of the book. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to Deborah.
That's just so great, Amy, and Miriam too. Just wow, I could just sit here and listen to people talk about this book all day, and I guess that's what we're about to do. And it's my turn. Cai, I want to reiterate what an honor it is. Thank you for inviting me to be part of this magnificent group of talented writing women, and of course, especially you. It's so great to celebrate your beautiful book. Glorious prose indeed, gorgeous prose. And I agree so much with Amy. It's relevant, it's timely, and it's so alive. And we're so lucky to be in it with that aliveness. So when we were all given this assignment, which is so exciting to find a few passages, I told Cai that I wanted to read something about Panina. And she, the character Panina, and she said to me that Panina for her is really the kind of the heart of the novel. And so I thought about that a lot. I've been walking around thinking about why that would be. Panina is one of the two teenagers in the book, and she's the most developed of the two. And I admire so much, Cai, how you did develop this young woman. I mean, we're all walking contradictions in our lives, especially when we're teenagers. And somehow, just like Amy was talking about the geography, you managed to make Panina all things at once and so believable in that way. She's a young woman who wants to be part of the modern world. She wants to dress in the clothes and have the boyfriends and do all the fun things that teenagers do. And yet she's acutely aware that something dark is coming and that she must be part of it. She feels committed for reasons that she can't even understand to step in and face this oncoming assault on all of us. And she wants to very much be in touch with her ethnicity and her culture, the traditions of her culture, which she can't quite grasp. They seem so far away, and yet she wants them. She doesn't want them at the same time. And we get to watch her struggle with that idea of who am I in this small way, in this large way, in this broader context, which is wonderful to be woven through this book in terms of that, again, geography, but also ethnicity. And then also what's magical about Panina is that she's loyal to her parents. She wants them to be part of her life. She relies very much on this father she's attached to and close to, and yet she's pushing so hard to get away from them. And she wants very much to be her own distinct person. And we watch her struggle and struggle and struggle with those boundaries. Bronwyn, the protagonist, becomes someone she can trust and talk to, and she needs that very much to find this power in herself, that she's going to bring into these troubled times. And so I was thrilled that the younger readers, all of us will resonate with Penina, or she'll resonate with us, but younger readers are going to recognize in her that we have put them in a bewildering place in this time. And it's this new generation has to actually redefine what it means to hope for a future and to create a future. And Penina is such a symbol of that. So really want to thank you for creating her like you did. And I'm just going to read 2 paragraphs from Penina's point of view, or not. Yeah, I guess it is her point of view. Penina listens for her father's deep breathing. It takes forever for him to fall asleep, but he doesn't say a word to her, still bound by the silence. The silence is a relief to her in a way, because it means he can't chide her or pelt her with questions. He has never asked her so many questions as he has on this trip. It's as if there's something he wants to know about her that even she doesn't know. At last his breath moves like the tide, long and slow. She bunches up her blanket and shoulders it, finds her shoes and flashlight, and ever so quietly heads outside. It's cool out here, but the purple jacket keeps her warm. If she were another kind of girl, the dark might scare her, but she's not scared. She has always been the last to get scared. The other cabin is right next door, a short walk. She pokes her head in the doorway, aiming her flashlight beam down, expecting Edel and Patty to be awake as they were the night before. They're both conked out, still as rocks, Patty's breathing making a bug-like whir, Edel's as silent as the stars. Penina enters, trying not to wake them, though she wouldn't mind if she did, and she fumbles her way to one of the empty bottom bunks. She turns off her light and sheds her shoes and climbs onto the mattress, drawing her blanket close, jacket still on, kept wide awake by the sound of her fluttering heart. And now my darling friend Sands.
Thank you, Deborah, and thank you, Miriam. Thank you, Tattered Cover, and Cai. Like, as everyone has said, I'm so honored to be amongst those writers that are doing our best to be you today in our weird, wonderful glasses. So one of the things I adore about this book, and there's so many that are, Amy and Deborah have been so articulate, but for me, one of the most, 2 things I just want to say. One is that in Sinking Islands, as with Weather Woman, there is mention of weather all the time in these books, but you're never hit over the head by it. It's not like Cai is wielding a 2x4. It's just that it's part of the observation of the characters. And that leads me to the splendid work that Cai does with point of view. I think there are 7 points of view in this one novel, and you never are confused. You're following each of their stories and how they're going to eventually coalesce. And each of them, you're not only seeing through their eyes and thinking their thoughts, it's like you're in their corpuscles. And I just think it's a fabulous reason to read this book for that alone, those of you who are writers out there, because it's such a lesson in how to wield point of view so beautifully. Honolulu and his island, Penina too, and then there's Patty over in Venice, and there's just people all over the planet, as Amy said. I'm going to read from yet another, and again, I'm going to read a couple of paragraphs and then also the very end of this chapter. This is our first introduction to a professor named Dr. Diane Fenwick. The heat is cranked too high, and the amphitheater is steamy with the breath of 300 geeky, satin-cheeked undergraduates, mostly men, freshmen and sophomore superlative students, lovable for their eagerness, but bloated with hubris. She usually likes the chance to work with undergraduates who aren't yet jaded. She can look into their formless, bud-like faces and see them as puttering children exploring things on their own terms, still oblivious to the world's demands and conventions. But today, on the first day of the term, Dr. Diane Fenwick returns to teaching unrestored by the break. Her situation on campus has become unbearable. She's no dope. She knows she's being shunned. In the hallways and on the quad, other faculty members refused to look at her, sometimes pointedly turning their backs. Even Newt Goldberg, a chemist known for being aggressively friendly, no longer hails her from his office. She hasn't done anything actionable in terms of her tenure, but she's made the mistake of sharing with a few people the crack in her belief system, prompted by seeing what Bronwyn can do. And now no distinguished scientist wants to be associated with a colleague who is even entertaining the idea that human beings might influence the Earth's forces. Surely such a person must have lost her mind, and without a mind, you certainly do not belong at major research institution. It's her own damn fault for thinking a few others might be open-minded. And this chapter goes on. She tries to teach a class, but she's so flummoxed, she actually lets them go early, which she's never done in her career before. And she heads back to her office. Newt Goldberg's door is open as usual, but he doesn't look up as she passes. She closes her own office door and collapses into the desk chair. It is only January, but winter has already outstayed its welcome. Drifts along the streets and sidewalks are so calcified with black particulates, they no longer resemble snow. Even in the places where the snow has not been disturbed, cycles of melting and refreezing have left a crust, a perfect landing pad for dust and soot, which makes the city's pollution unpleasantly visible. She fires up her computer, wondering if one more email to Bronwyn is in order. Her inbox is full, much of it missives from the university's administration that don't require a response. One from the dean says, "Chat?" in the subject line. She stares at the word chat, not the kind of formal subject heading for an email he'd be sending university-wide. Nope, it's meant for her alone. "Let's have a chat soon, Diane," he says. "I'd like to learn more about your radical revision of belief." He doesn't say more. He doesn't have to. And now it's my pleasure to turn things over to Ellen.
Thank you so much, Sands. And oh, Cai, I'm just so pleased to be here and doing this with you and with this group. I think the thing I love best about Sinking Islands is the way that Bronwyn inhabits her body, the way her power resides in her senses, her nerves, her organs, her molecules and muscles, and her bones. Her strength and her compassion grow right from her cells. I love the physicality of the descriptions that you've written in this book. You know, Cai has written a novel that's both deeply rooted in our current world, but not afraid to dream beyond our world. She's given us a female hero, a feminist heroine who uses her power to bring people together to heal the world. Kind of what we need right now, huh? So I'm going to read a couple of paragraphs from Bronwyn's perspective, Bronwyn being the weather woman, the sort of center of this whole story. And I apologize for taking off my Cai glasses, but I just can't read with them. It is one of those days when she fully appreciates her ability to see and hear and smell with her whole body. She has come to think of herself as a seismologist, listening to the earth's heart. Images rise up from the soles of her feet, insinuate themselves through the tips of her fingers. Sound enters through her chest and neck, funnels down the length of her spine to her coccyx. Scents arrive and twirl around her like scarves. Rain, blood, exhaust, pea soup, the legs of ants crawling through the grass, tectonic plates creaking, the whoosh of oscillating tides, the celestial crooning of faraway whales. When she holds her coffee mug on such days, she sees beneath its glazed surface the ceramic clay, the coffee's hydrogen and oxygen, and ground Brazilian beans, all distinct parts. Last night, she didn't sleep. Biblical rains have been falling across the Midwest. She heard this at work yesterday, and Matt confirmed it last night. It's the kind of rain that makes roads impassable, kills crops, catalyzes mudslides, the kind of rain that is more enemy than friend. This morning, it is still falling. 2 full days now. Knowledge of it runs in her blood. It can't be unknown. The thing in her has awakened and begun to rustle like a behemoth animal lumbering from its lair in early spring, squinting into the light, lurching, reluctant, curmudgeonly, but incapable of resisting the cyclical bodily mandate. Thank you, Cai, for writing this book. And Elizabeth is next.
Thank you, Ellen, and thank you so much, Cai, and all of you. This is just such a pleasure and an honor to be included in this. And I am delighted to read from and talk about Sinking Islands a little bit. I echo so much of what everyone else has said. I have to say I was particularly struck, as Ellen was, with the sensuality of the book and the senses and the scene setting that you take such patience to do that, Cai. You bring us into the minuscule details in a sensual way. And I feel that this is, not only is it beautiful to read, but you feel the tragedy of the loss that is happening as we're in this environment so beautifully wrought by you. And so that was really something that continuously struck me throughout the book as we moved from one climate to the other. I was very drawn to the scenes in Greenland as well, but I chose to read about Felipe, who is a native of Sao Paulo, Brazil, where there's a severe drought. As his section opens, his chapter 5 is the first meeting with Felipe. And he is, as formerly described, I think, in this by this panel, he was the beautiful body strolling around that was bit by the stung by the jellyfish. So we've already seen a little bit of him. He's very much embodied, and that's one of the things I loved about him. You feel him. He's a former dancer. He's an actor. There's a constant sort of there's a dynamism about his physicality that pulses in every scene. And he I don't want to give away anything, but his body really ends up getting people in trouble later, which is kind of, I think, wonderful and very apt. I'll read from, as I said, chapter 5, and I'll just say a couple of things because I'm going to read from the end of the chapter. So there's a drought in the city, and water is very scarce. Drinking water is very scarce, and there's a sanitation crisis, and small riots have been breaking out over the city. So there's a very tense and parched feeling. That Cai sets up beautifully. And Felipe is on his way back from a thwarted rehearsal, and he's struggling to write a play as he returns to the streets of Sao Paulo. And I'll read a few chapters on this, a few paragraphs, and I'm going to skip a little bit in there. After the waitress leaves, Felipe notices a dead spider belly up on the water's surface. He laughs to himself, thinking how even last year he would have objected, asked for a new glass. Now he fishes the spider out, flicks it to the ground, and drinks, allowing himself only a few sips at a time to make it last. After the first few sips, he takes out his phone and holds up the glass so it snares some golden light, making the water look beautifully smoldering. He snaps a photo. Perfect grade A water, pure and full-bodied, with more complex notes than his favorite Cabernet, and certainly more satisfaction. He has never before appreciated the flavor of good water. These days, it's hard to find water that isn't brackish or redolent of some rank odor, heavy chlorine or iron or sulfur or, God forbid, sewage. He's quite sure he'll find this image reassuring in the days to come. So he goes home and he's making himself sit at the table that serves as dining table and desk, where he breaks out his computer and opens an empty Word file. His brain is inert. He thinks of the glass of water he drank earlier, how he was able to taste every drop, each a delicious, generous bead. Sometimes he imagines the city's reservoirs going entirely dry, nothing left at all. He envisions a mass exodus from Sao Paulo, people booking planes to more water-blessed places in Brazil and beyond. Where would he go if it came to that? The rest of his family, his parents and 3 sisters, moved to Rio years ago. At the time, he couldn't comprehend moving away from the place where you were born and raised, and he still can't. He is Paulistano through and through. He loves this city. Parched as it is still lively, still a city of inventors and artists. This is the only place he's ever known. It saddens him to think of a great city like this collapsing from lack of water and all the associated disease and starvation. But it could happen, couldn't it? Shouldn't he try to write about that? He pulls his shades so the apartment light turns sepia, and rummaging in a duffel bag he keeps in the closet. And rummages in a duffel bag he keeps in the closet. He pulls out a silk slip. Stripping off his shorts, he slides into the slip. It's a pink, deep pink, the color of certain orchids, and it's been worn to exquisite softness. He lies on the bed and strokes the fabric covering his thighs, his buttocks. He closes his eyes, thinking of his childhood summers when school would be out and they'd go to the beach, he and his sisters and his mother and father. How free they were then, how oblivious to peril. No one worried about water, whether there was enough or if it was clean. Back then, no one worried about anything. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Piggybacking on what Sands was saying about point of view, this book being a point of view masterclass, and what Ellen and Elizabeth have said about the embodied and the sensual. The wonderful thing about hearing 6 different people read from this is each point of view that you're hearing sounds like, oh, there's the protagonist. There's the main character. Each one is rendered in such specific, beautiful detail that any place you land in this book is a whole world and a whole life. We've got some questions. The first one is from RKC629, who loved Weather Woman. This is an easy question. It's a yes or no question. I loved Weather Woman. They listened to it on Audible. Will Sinking Islands be made into an audiobook? I don't know the answer to this question.
I don't know for sure if there will be an Audible book, but there was for Weather Woman, so I imagine there will be for Sinking Islands.
That's great news. Wendy Beck has an interesting question. Cai, were you ruminating on Sinking Islands while you were writing Weather Woman? Or was there a pause before you decided that there was more to Bronwyn's fantastic story? Thank you. Thank you, Wendy. So while Cai is composing an answer, panelists, guest stars, I guess we're guest stars, guest Kais, do you have any, we're hearing all about the supply chain and how we all have to be patient with all the new books we long for and want. Do you have anything from Kai's backlist that you would like to recommend to eager readers? I will go first and say that Vanishing, Kai's award-winning short story collection, made me believe that Cai was a short story writer who writes novels on the side for fun. They were so masterful, so compelling, so compact. They were both dense, so much packed into their pages, one after another. I was blown away. I taught it at the university where I teach. Students loved it. So that's where I would suggest going after you're done with Sinking Islands and Weather Woman. Cai, are you ready
I
with
never
your
thought
answer?
I'd write a sequel at all until after I was finished with Weather Woman, and someone told me she was sure there was more to be said. And after a while, I saw she was right. And I particularly wanted to correct the idea that one woman can fix our climate crisis alone.
Thank you. Another question from Adam at Tattered Cover. Have any of your personal experiences become an experience in your novels? And then I'm going to let anyone else who wants to recommend a Cai book say their piece. Anybody want to say their piece?
Well, I'll just jam in here to say that I too adored Vanishing. Also, I believe that Cai at times has read those short stories accompanied by jazz musicians, which is just an extraordinary treat to have seen. And I was so knocked off my feet by Weather Woman, I just have to say. And then to be able, I love Cai's answer to that great question of, because that's a beautiful point Cai just made, that she didn't want it to be just one person, because that's part of, as you said, Miriam, in your introductory remarks, that's part of what makes the book hopeful, that there is this possibility that we could shift the way we look at the weather and look at the world. And so I loved that answer, and just those two books together are just a great combo.
Cai, go for it.
I often use little details from my personal life in a scene, but I don't think I've ever included an entire scene from life, although I do confess there is one story in Vanishing that is very autobiographical.
I think that begs the question.
Yeah, the whole story is.
Yeah, I'm interested to know what story that was, but you don't have to answer that yet, because we have another question from someone watching. Oh, Patty. Hi, Patty. I have commended Cai for naming characters the same as people in her life. So there's Patty in this book, and she also has a sister named Patty who has a question. And this is not a depiction of Patty, her sister. This is an entirely different Patty in the book, I should clarify. So Cai, can you talk about the relationship between Patty and Earl? You made their communication seem so real. And while Cai is typing the answer to that, do we want to chime in about any of Cai's other books or any other cli-fi, climate fiction we've really liked? Deborah?
Yeah, well, I'm just going to put a little bit of energy out there towards Cai's magnificent nonfiction. She's just turned out to be quite the nonfiction writer lately. And if you're not signed up for her newsletter, get on that, because it's a treat. And just these beautiful essays, and many of them about ALS, but just about where we are as people and women and feminists. It's just she's, I don't know, I just wish I'd known that she had this nonfiction strand in her earlier. I would have been pushing her for it, but it's lovely. And I also say that we're also lucky to be reading Unleashed in the near future. She just announced today on Twitter, I think, that it has sold to Dutton, and so next year we'll have a new novel, Unleashed. Yay, Cai!
Dot.
Did you have an answer that then disappeared? That's okay. Anybody want to chime in with any
I
other?
accidentally erased my answer.
It erased your answer. That's okay. We can continue to be your stand-ins. Anybody else want to talk about any Cai work or any climate fiction that would make good companions to this?
I think one of the things that's amazing in these books that we've been talking about, Vanishing and Weather Woman and Sinking Islands, is that, and I was delighted to be able to interview Cai and for Writer's Digest, and that came out today. And one of the things we talked about was that Cai had kind of invented a new literary genre in these books, both in the short fiction and in these two novels, that kind of bring a little bit of speculative in and marry it with a highly literary, and and then get into the scientific and bring in, sort of, there's a term called nerd novels, that are books about scientists with science at the heart of them. And so I think that she needs to be applauded for that. It's a hugely courageous thing to create a whole new literary genre, basically, flying in the face of lots of so-called rules about what you can and can't do. And I think it's masterful, truly remarkable. So
I wanted Earl in Sinking Islands, but I had killed him off in Weather Woman. So instead of bringing him back to life, which felt cheesy, I decided she would talk to him sort of beyond the grave, and he gives her advice.
Amy, I
That's-
really love what you just said about the speculative aspect, the magic realism of in a way, of these books, and how beautifully put that is. It makes such wonderful sense. I just wanted to thank you for expressing that. It's great.
Cai, are you up for one more question? Great. This is something we all hit
There
upon.
already is a video. Yes, there already is a video.
So a question was, will there be a video promo for Sinking Islands like one for Weather Woman? And Cai said yes. If you follow Cai on Twitter, I believe she's at Cai Emmons. There's probably that you can find the video in a tweet.
And it can be found on YouTube.
And it can be found on YouTube. Fantastic. Okay. Oh, great. Hi, Ty.
Hello, everyone. Did you all want to answer that last question? I can, if there's time, and Cai, if you're up to it, there was another question. I don't know if you've seen it, Mary.
Yeah, I see that. I love the way you inhabit such different voices. Do you have specific ways you access or deepen characters as you write or rewrite them? And I would like to take notes during this answer so that I can also learn this skill the way that Cai has it down. This seems like a good time to thank, again, Tattered Cover, to thank Cai, who had this idea to gather a bunch of people to read her work, to thank everybody who read, to encourage everyone to run out and get this book ASAP. Look how beautiful it is, too.
The Tattered Cover has it up on their site. You all can order it on our website. This event was awesome tonight. You all received so much love from the audience, our virtual audience. You have many folks that are telling you hi, Cai, and also to our panelists. This was such an awesome event. Thank you all so much. I'm glad we were all able to be a part of it. That's awesome.
Cai, you have one more answer?
With Sinking Islands, I was thinking a lot about how the places they're from inform them. For example, Analu is a good fisherman and very related to Animo, largely because he comes from a tiny island in the middle of the South Pacific. So I kind of exploited those things and built them into a personality.
Yeah, as I was saying earlier, that's one of the most impressive parts of the book is how she occupies such incredibly diverse points of view. Just
And also Mary's, what she just said about marrying place and person, and how a character is not just an individual or personality, is really a composite of all the experience lived and the places lived and the tastes and senses and smells and sense memories. And she captured that in each and every character so beautifully.
There's more to be said, of course, but it's hard to say it quickly and briefly.
yes.
Can we give Cai the last word, though?
Absolutely, we can, yes.
Awesome. Cai, do you want any quick, brief, easily typed final words?
I want to thank everyone for coming. I am so grateful to your readers and to all those in attendance. I am really honored. Thank you.
Thank you, Cai. We appreciate you so much. And again, I want to reiterate that tonight's event was awesome. You received so much love from the audience members. All of you did. It was awesome to all watch you all in tandem and talk. And yes, I'm very glad that I got to host you all tonight. I want to thank again the guests for joining us, and again remind you all that you can get Cai's debut, Seeking Islands, here at Tattered Cover, online, in the store, right here with us. And I want to give you all a moment to tell our guests where they can find you all online, if you wouldn't mind.
And I can send you an autographed book plate.
Yes.
Nice.
Thank you.
Cai, congratulations on your book,
Hi, yes.
baby. Your book being born today.
Publication
Yay.
Day.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Mhm. Okay.
Do you all have any location of where folks can find you online, the guests, like Twitter or Instagram, Facebook, your website?
I think we're easy to find.
Yeah.
Just okay.
Twitter, website. I think we all are findable by our names. Yeah?
Yeah.
Anybody have
Yeah.
see anything?
But thank you, Ty, for that question. I so appreciate it.
Me too.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
so much,
Ty.
Cai.
Yes,
Thank
sure. I want to let our guests know that, of course, you all can find us at tattercover.com or Tattered Cover Bookstore on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Again, thank you all for joining us this evening. We wouldn't be here without you all and you all's support, and your support of local bookstores and authors. Stay safe, you all out there, and have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Read the
you.
book with other writers here.